we have some very interesting news. This is very, very surprising, Mario. So Chip Ganassi, who is the owner of Chip Ganassi Racing, he actually sold his entire NASCAR team to Trackhouse Racing, what's interesting about Trackhouse Racing, Mario, is that it's not only owned by Justin Marks, but it's also owned by Pitbull.
Mr. Worldwide.
Mr. Worldwide. Yes, sir. That's who it is. But look, he actually sold it because he was quote this is what Paul Ganassi said. He actually said a lot. He said, and I quote, he made me a great offer that required my attention. I'm not out of racing, I'm just out of NASCAR. I still have an Indy car team. I still have an IMSA sports car team. I still have a Formula E team. I had an offer that I was required to consider. And yeah, Mario, he actually goes on to talk about a lot about it. He said that NASCAR had an infusion of new interest for younger owners. I remember we talked about the Michael Jordan, Denny Hamlin, with the 23XI racing, 2311 racing. Jeff Gordon was given a new offer for Hendrick Motorsport, which is probably one of the more popular racing groups. And Brad Keselowski at the end of the season is expected to move to Roush Fenway Racing in a role that gives him an ownership stake. So a lot of these racers are actually starting to become part owners and given roles in their respected racing division. So that's why he ended up selling. Well, that's one of the reasons why he ended up selling his team. And I have another quote here from Chip Ganassi, excuse me. He said, and I quote, I felt there was a lot of energetic through being put into what Justin was saying. With all the new blood that seems to be coming into the sport now with Michael Jordan, Denny Hamlin, maybe Keselowski, Tony Stewart as a team, and Jeff Gordon getting back involved, the sport is really a new group. We talk about a new generation of drivers, but I think you're going to see a new generation of owners, which is true. You're seeing that a lot in sports in general. And I have a quote from Justin Marks, Mario. He said, and I quote, where does it start? Right here. Okay, it says, and I quote, I think there's a lesson here that sometimes you just have to make the call, and that's what I did. I said, I said, I'm in the process right now. We're at a point in time where I'm trying to identify opportunities to grow to this space and to create a great future for the track house. He also went on to say he was interested in hearing what I had to say. I think maybe he didn't know how serious I was. We had a great conversation that day. And I think his quote continues right here. It says, and I quote, Chip has built an iconic motorsports empire, and the Ganassi brand is globally recognized as a winner in the auto racing industry. It's truly an honor that we can build from that foundation. So yeah, Mario, when I heard about this shocked me. I did not see this coming. Then it was pretty crazy. And there's one more quote from Justin Marks that says, and I quote, this acquisition provides Trackhouse a platform for years to come, enabling us to field multiple teams, elevate our on-track performance, deliver great value for our sponsors and partners, build lasting community impact programs, and continue to grow our brand beyond the sport conversation. So I'll let you start off with this first, but before I do, this article was written by ESPN Associated Press. Your thoughts on Chip Ganassi selling his entire team to Trackhouse Racing?
Well, first of all, I'm gonna miss Chip Ganassi in NASCAR, but he still is an IndyCar racer, and he has a lot of good potential racers. Alex Palou, Jimmy Johnson, not the Jimmy Johnson you might think. This is a rookie Jimmy Johnson, and spelled differently. Tony Kanaan, and then Romain Grosjean. But other than that, Nate, I'm gonna miss him in NASCAR. Guys like Kurt Busch and Ross Chastain, they're gonna be guys that are potential candidates to be racing for Trackhouse Racing. But yeah, what I'm kind of concerned with, Nate, is the current employees for Ganassi Racing. They're going to be considered for a retainment, but I don't think that means everybody's going to get their job back. That's the one thing that concerns me right there, is everybody from Ganassi Racing going to get their job back, which in that case, I think they should. I think the employees from Ganassi Racing should go to Trackhouse Racing, because again, if you're talking about how great Ganassi Racing has been, a big part of that is their employees, and what better way to bring those employees to Trackhouse Racing. Now, Trackhouse Racing, it is owned by Justin Marks and Pitbull, Mr. Worldwide. So again, we'll see what happens there. But overall, Nate, it is very shocking, because Chip Ganassi has been part of NASCAR for a very, very long time, Obviously, we talk about he's a pretty iconic race car owner, and it's interesting how he talks about the new owners coming in, like Michael Jordan, Denny Hamlin, Keselowski, Tony Stewart, Jeff Gordon, all those guys, you know. I'm surprised he's letting it go this easily. You know, I'm surprised they just made him an offer. He was like, okay, after all these years. I understand they're going into a new ownership role and a new generation of owners are coming in. But again, I still think that he could have kept it, you know? Something about this just irks me the wrong way. But that doesn't mean Justin Marks and Pitbull and Trackhouse Racing are not going to do a good job. I feel like they're going to do a good job, you know? But I feel like they should give those Chip Ganassi employees, I feel like they should give them a job at Trackhouse Racing as well. But again, regarding with like Trackhouse Racing and Ganassi Racing, you know, I don't know if everybody's going to get their job back, which is something that's going to be very concerning in my opinion. So overall, if I had to point to something there, I'd point to probably like a thumbs down. You know, I'm just not that too big of a fan of it. But who knows? You know, Trackhouse Racing could prove me wrong, end up doing a great job with this, and build a great racing crew out of it. You know, just like Chip Ganassi has. It's up for Trackhouse Racing to continue that legacy. And overall, with Chip Ganassi, I wish him the best of luck in Formula, IndyCar racing. I wish him the best of luck in those venues and or adventures as well. And as for Trackhouse Racing, you know, I wish them the best of luck in NASCAR.
Yeah, you know, best of luck to Chip Ganassi in the IndyCar series. Best of luck to Trackhouse Racing. Yeah, Mark, I get what you're saying. You know, and I found it very interesting for one of the reasons for him to sell his racing division, and that was because of the owners. You know, we forgot to talk about how Jeff Gordon is now given a new role in Hendrick Motorsports, which I think is huge because that's the racing division he raced with for pretty much his entire career. And now that Jeff Gordon's one of the greatest NASCAR racers to ever drop of all time. You know, we all remember Jeff Gordon. I don't need to introduce who he is. You know, he was one of my favorite racers growing up. But for him to be back into NASCAR, that's a big deal because, like I said, Jeff Gordon's one of the all-time greats. So for him to play a role in Hendrick Motorsports, which again, like I mentioned, is the motorsport he basically spent his entire career with, you know, that's a big deal. You know, and also not to mention Denny Hamlin, who's still, you know, one of the best racers right now, you know, to team up with Michael Jordan and create their racing division, that's a big deal as well because it's kind of shifting the tide into what we know, what we once know and loved as NASCAR, you know? Like newer and fresher minds are starting to come into the game. And that's what I like, you know, and then we talked about it too with Alvin Kamara now playing a role in NASCAR, wanting to help rebuild that fan base that just kind of died out. You know what I mean? So the sport of NASCAR is evolving so much more than we realize, you know, because NASCAR, like I said, it was such a huge sport, and it still is to this day. It still is a very big sport. It just doesn't hold that charm that it once did. Right. You know, and for all these young owners and for all these young fresh minds that come in and fix it, I do like the idea, which is why I find this reason to sell the brand pretty interesting.
Right. And it's not just the owners, Nate. You know, it's a lot. There's new drivers coming in, like Alvin Kamara even getting like a position in NASCAR. Like stuff like that it shows how big this NASCAR is evolving. Because if we go back like 10 years, I don't think any of this would have happened. Now it's suddenly starting to happen, which shows you the involvement with
and it's also evolving. It's also evolving in gender as well. You know, I remember Danica Patrick. She was like the only female driver. Now there's a couple I can think of. You know, you got like Haley Deegan and who's the daughter of Brian Deegan, if you know who he is. You got Tony Breedinger, she's the first Arab American woman ever raced in NASCAR. You know, so that's, you know, the sport of NASCAR is just ever evolving. It's evolving so much more than you possibly realize. So to have all these fresh minds come in and help out, you know, bring back the charm that NASCAR once held, it's really cool. So I did find that to be a very interesting reason. But like you said, I still think he could have held on to that ownership role. But I do respect his decision because we talk about all the time. We respect everybody's decisions no matter what. Yeah. And you know, he wants NASCAR to be held on to the next generation. I do like that because this is a sport that does deserve to live on for as long as it can. I definitely do mean that. I don't really watch NASCAR as much anymore. I'm starting to kind of catch up with it a little bit more. It's still a sport I enjoy watching. So with that being said, you know, best of luck to Trackhouse Racing with the Chip Ganassi Racing division. I'm not sure if it's going to hold on to that name. It didn't really say. So I'm not so sure if it's going to have that name still. But if so, regardless, I do wish them the best of luck anyways. As for Chip Ganassi, best of luck to you in the IndyCar racing. We'll see what happens moving forward.